I only read one book, but it's a good book, don't you know? I act the way I act because the good book tells me so. If I want to know how to be good, it's to the good book that I go. Because the good book is a book, and it is good, and it's a book.
And it came to pass, after these things, that God did tempt Abraham, for he was bored shitless, and he did like to know Abraham's mind, and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here I am. And with a boing sound he did jump out from behind a camel, wearing a badly fitting Superman costume, making him look like a rather out-of-shape geriatric superhero. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Mordor, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And Abraham did sit there, open-mouthed, and did asketh the Lord if he was fuckest crazy. And he did asketh why the Lord would ask him to do such a thing. And the Lord did say it was so that he could find out if Abraham did believe in the Lord. And Abraham did point out that he didn't have to, as the Lord was always dropping by to talk to him and raiding his supply of buffalo rings and onion rings. And Abraham did see that the Lord was serious, and so left it at that. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, for he did like being ridden like a champion, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son. For one does not simply walk alone into Mordor. And he clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up again, and went unto the place for which God had told him, which isn't specified in this narrative, but he would knowest it once he did seest it. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw the place afar off, though he probably wouldst have seen it sooner, and it wouldn't have taken them 3 days to get there, had he been looking where he was going, instead of staring at his feet. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, so that it does not get stolen. For the last time I did come here, when I did get back, I did find the ass upon blocks, and the radio had been stolen. And I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come back again to you. Which, strictly speaking, wasn't the exact plan that Abraham was working to. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, and laid it upon Isaac his son, so that he could put it on his back and drag it up the hill on his way to certain doom, in a way which would be a foreshadowing of an alleged event many years from now that would have great significance in the future. And he took the fire in his hand, and did burn himself badly, for he did not have asbestos fingers, and so he did pick up the other end of the lit torch, and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. And he said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering for Isaac? For they did refer to themselves in the 3rd person in those days. And beside, Isaac was a smart boy, but obviously not that smart that he did not occur to him to ask this question earlier when they did first set off, so that in the event that they had forgotten to bring one, they did not have to spend 3 days going all the way back to go and get it. And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. And Isaac did say that it was a bit of a pity that God couldn't also provide the wood for the burnt offering too, for carrying the big bundle and kindling all the way up to the top of the hill they were climbing was surely back-breaking work. So they went, both of them, together. And they came to the place which God had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there, and he laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Isaac did say unto his father, My father. And he did say, Here I am, son. And Isaac did say, But the bloody lamb for the sacrifice isn't thou, is it? Surely is there something that thou shouldest be telling me? And his father did ask him what it was that did give him the idea that he was not necessarily giving him the full story. And he did ask his son to open wide his mouth, and he did firmly wedge an apple in it. And Isaac did say,
It is off, I give, and a fucking apple in a fucking knife. and you are clearly right now looking awfully weird sauce.
And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. And his son would have gone fuckest apeshit had he known what an ape was, though the reaction he did give would be described so in years to come, and he did promise to tidy his tent often, to do a great many jobs around the camp, and dispose of the stone tablets that did have the badly drawn etchings upon them of naked ladies, that he did keep under his straw mattress. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And the Lord did leap out from behind a rock with a sound resembling a thunderclap, this time in a Batman costume that was 3 sizes too small for him, and he did hold on to the edges of his cape, and did flap his arms around, and he said, Here I am. And Abraham did ask unto the Lord what as the fuckest he did want, and did point out unto him that he was in the middle of something, and did ask him if it couldst wait. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. And both Abraham and his son were motionless, and did both turnest around to look upon the Lord. And after a moment of silence, Isaac did spit out the apple from his mouth, and did ask his father if the man in the bird outfit was the Lord. And Abraham did say that he was, and he did ask his father if he was the same Lord who did create the universe, and could look into a man's mind and know his every thought, because he knew everything. And his father did say that he was. And Isaac did ask his father then why the fuckers he did need to actually go through with sacrificing his one and only son, apart from the other one, as part of some twisted test, if the Lord did already knowest how much he did fear him, and that if he did ask him to do it, he would do it anyway. And Abraham did think for a minute, and they did say that the lad did have a good point, and the Lord did have to admit that he was simply wanting to know Abraham's mind. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, which had been there all along, trying to make as little noise as possible, and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And his son did say that he was going to tell his mother, and that she would report him to child services just as soon as they were invented. And he did sulk mightily, for he did have a good reason. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah-Jireh, which doth mean that the Lord will provide, the Lord has seen, or the Lord sees, depending on who you do ask. As it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. Though, unfortunately, though it is called this to this day, nobody actually knows where the place is, although this mainly stems from the confusion of asking the locals where over there is. And the angel of the Lord called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time. And he did tell him to tell the Lord that Mrs. God had told him to tell the Lord to stop fucking with Abraham by getting him to do stupid things for no particular reason. And if the Lord is lost for something to do, then he should finish putting up the set of shelves he had started in the spare room. And that the downstairs toilet could do with a fresh coat of paint due to the Lord's liking of spicy food, and that the Lord did forget to put the seat down again, and it did leave puddles all over the floor this morning. And the Lord did roll his eyes, and did ignore the angel of the Lord, and did continue eating his kebab, and said, By myself have I sworn, saith the Lord between mouthfuls, for because thou hast done this thing, that hath not withheld thy son, thine only son, apart from the other one, as admittedly I already knew, as I already know everything, because I am everywhere, in all time and space, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore, but not the desert which does surround us, and is much more plentiful in sand, for that would be a bit much. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. And Abraham did start to ask the Lord if he had not already granted that particular blessing as part of one of his many previous covenants. But Isaac did nudge him in his ribs sharply, and did pull the sleeve of his robe over his clenched fist, and did shake his head urgently, while motioning towards his circumcised cock. and in thy seed shall all nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. And Abraham did look unto his knife, and did suddenly consider that now would not be the best time to mention that would be something he would give his left testicle for. And he did wince, and did say thank you unto the Lord. So Abraham returned unto his young men, and they did remark that Isaac was not as talkative as he once had been, and he did appear to be covered in buffalo wing sauce. And they rose up and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham dwelt at Beersheba, because that is where his tent was. And it came to pass, after these things, that it was told Abraham, saying, Behold, Milcah, she hath also borne children unto thy brother Nahor, though 'tis was unknown exactly when this did happen. For surely Abraham's brother Nahor was as old as Abraham, if not older. And in times to come, after reading this verse, and knowing what was to come later in chapters hence, a man who would come to read this chapter in a literal yet amusing way would work out the relative ages between Abraham, Isaac, and the children born unto Nahor and Milcah, if they were to have their children at what would be considered to be a normal age. For instance, before the age of 50. And behold, yet another list. Huz, his firstborn, who did have a multiple personality disorder, and Buz, his brother, who did dress all in white in what would one day resemble a thing called a spacesuit, and would have walked with steps that were small for a man, but giant for mankind, had he been first, but instead settled for going to infinity and beyond. For he did have folding wings on his back that did make him look like an angel of the Lord, and Kemuel, the father of Aram, for he did like to know his flocks, and Chesed, who would have been cheesed had he been given an extra E, and Hazo, who did have a middle name of Dus, and was a dangerous person to get on the wrong side of, and Pildash, who was a courier for the local drug dealers, and did dash a great many places with a great many pills, and Jidlaf, who would have told you his real name, if you wouldn't surely find it amusing, and Bethuel, who we will hear about later. And Bethuel begat Rebekah, who would have to be born unto her father, who too would have had to have been born unto his father at the age of 50, if she was to stand any chance of being the same age as Isaac, which would become important 2 chapters from now. These 8 Milcah did bear to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and his concubine, whose name was Reumah, for her existence was not officially acknowledged. She bare also Tebah, who did invent a steering control system for camels that was not a great success, but one day would be, when used on something that would one day be called a bicycle, and Gayam, who was originally called Graham, and did invent something called a mince, this being a way of walking and not a ground-up meat, and the hash, who, as would be expected, was most favoured by the Lord, and Macha, who did wear tracksuits and white trainers, did have a curly permed hair and a tash, and did never work a day in his life, and would call everyone he did meet our kid, and tell them to calm down repeatedly. And it did come to pass that the Lord did appear unto Abraham hence, with a whoosh and a pop, dressed head to toe in a Spider-Man outfit, and Abraham did give unto the Lord those burnt offerings that were upon the altar, which did greatly please the Lord, for he was famished. And he did choose unto himself an offering of buffalo wings, and lo, he did then realize that his costume did not have a hole for the mouth. And Abraham did laugh profusely, and the Lord did admonish Abraham greatly, telling unto him that he should goeth and insert his head forthwith into the arse of a cow, for he did not find the matter funny. And later that night there was a great commotion amongst the herds, and a distressed moo was heard across the dunes, as if the beast of the field had suddenly been greatly surprised from behind. And the Lord did look down from heaven, and did say unto himself, Now that's funny.